Unturned is presented by UpdateAI.
Where are we finding ourselves in the customer experience world, Alex?
Utter chaos.
That feels about right.
So many of us just kind of get that wrong. Like, you draft an email, you're like, oh, that's going to be good. But is it really? Have you tested it? Have you really put yourself in your customer's shoes? It takes some really kind of introspective work to put that.
So then,
in place.
what is the one answer and solution that will apply to everybody that gets us to that outcome? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unchurned podcast. As usual, Josh isn't here.
Usually I feel like it would be like
playing...
a Kristi isn't here. I've had like a bad run the last couple weeks.
Yeah. Well, Josh has like a legitimate excuse, and I feel like we need the audience to know that he is just playing ultimate founder and vacationing in Martha's Vineyard, like the CEO that he is.
Well, he's going through a really tough time as he settles into his beautiful new apartment with his lovely girlfriend and his puppy.
Gorgeous.
And, just
gorgeous family.
Really tough right now. Things for him.
Really
so I hope that
he's
Josh okay at Martha's Vineyard, and
we just need him to rest.
We're really rooting for him.
Recharge.
We're really rooting for him.
Our hearts go out.
So, Josh, if you are listening to this, I really just wanted to say fuck you, but
and you did. So there you go.
Yeah, but I did it like with a tone.
So you're like kind of like
lovely.
Taylor Swift, right? And her "Thank You, Amy" song.
But Mom, I love him. This is a bit of a podcast inception because not only do we have the supreme Kristi Faltorusso,
nice.
champion of She's So Sweet.
Oh, I love that.
We also have Alex Turkovic from the Digital Customer Experience podcast. CX baby. And we have all been guests on one another's podcasts at one time or another.
Well, that's a lie, because I actually haven't had either of you on the She's So Sweet podcast. And not to discriminate.
Okay. No. Let me clarify. We have been on the podcast that we are eligible for.
Yes. Where it's relevant.
This is an equity, not an equality.
Right. Thank you.
Well, you guys hold the distinction of being one of or two of three, maybe four people that have actually been on twice.
Oh,
yeah, that's right. Double dipped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to do the thing that Josh hates the most because he's not here, and we're going to talk about our friendship a little bit. I know that we have some topics that we wanted to cover today. The things that I'm interested in for you specifically as a podcast host, I kind of want you to gas yourself up a little bit. There's a few things that I'm really interested in is some of the themes that you've been hearing and learning about on your podcast.
Yeah.
And then how that's actually affecting your career, what you're doing with your job and your day-to-day outside of podcast life. And I will say, if you haven't listened to Alex's podcast, it is very, very well done. It's very well thought out. He does this either or thing that he starts out to kind of build rapport, and I've always really loved it. We didn't plan for any of that today, so we don't actually have any games that we can play. Alex, you're kind of the king of those things.
It's all good.
But what was your favorite either or that you had this season on your podcast?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I only do the either or for like music people.
Okay.
So I did an either or with you. Mm-hmm. I did an either or with Kushmerik.
Mm-hmm.
Kushmerik, that guy.
Sense.
And an upcoming guest
who shall not be named.
Greg Rose.
One thing that I will say I loved is when he brought up a bunch of heavy rock.
Yeah, and you were like, I'm more of a hip hop guy.
Yeah, and I was like, I actually grew up listening to hip hop, and it was like a curveball. So he's like, this session probably isn't going to be as as exciting as it could have been. I was like, if you got Tribe Called Quest in there, I'm serious. We're into that.
That's funny. I've actually since that episode, I've started listening to a lot more Tribe Called Quest, and I'm a better person for it.
Yeah, I think we all are. Low End Theory will change your life, everybody.
It will.
But here we are. We're sitting on the first Monday of July. We're all probably very, very, very hot and sweaty with this heat dome that is over us. Where are we finding ourselves in the customer experience world, Alex?
Utter chaos.
That feels about right.
It's funny though, because as you were talking about, like, some of the themes and things like that I've picked up on, I mean, there's definitely a lot of themes that we can talk about. But a lot of times the emotion that I go through, I end up getting pissed off a lot as the result of my interviews, because I interview these people that are doing some incredible, amazingly innovative things. And 9 times, like in my W-2, in my regular like day job kind of stuff, we work primarily with like on-prem software. So we don't have the luxury of like telemetry data, and we don't have the luxury of like all this cool, rich stuff. And so they're doing all these things. I'm like, well, I don't know who my champions are. And, so it's a bit of a dichotomy too, because I have my finger on the pulse. However, and luckily I've been able. But
that's it.
Just finger on the pulse. And luckily I've been able to really start talking with a lot of founders and a lot of VPs and chief customer officers about this kind of stuff and helping them along and things like that. But when it comes to like, implementing in my day gig, I'm like operating with 2 hands tied behind my back a lot of times. So we have to get really innovative about the stuff we do, which is really cool.
No, that's something I'm curious about. Kristi, I feel like you might have a perspective too, when you do speak to a lot of people in the industry that are doing really interesting things, or at least want to do interesting things. And you learn all these things from podcasts or, webinars or events that you go to. And then you come home and you've got like the actual versus the ideal. And then you kind of have to like, oh, how do I fit this big audacious plan, either coming off of a conference or coming out of like a webinar, into the fact that, like you just said, you have both hands tied behind your back a little bit. And then there's that, okay, how do I stay like on top of these things as we're maturing?
Listen, here's my thoughts on this. I think the problem is that not every motion is for every company, right? Like even talking about scaled CS, in concept, we all want to embrace it, but we want to embrace it for the wrong reasons. We want to embrace it to save money, reduce spend on headcount, and try to figure out a way to drive similar motions with technology and process and workflows. But not every product, not every industry is going to be successful with that as the framework. So companies aren't necessarily thinking about their customers, they're thinking about themselves. And so the reason why these things don't fit or why these things don't work is because it's almost by design. It's like, this is the product that we are. And so I've been watching people struggle and fail left and right. And my question is always like, well, why are you doing that? Like nothing you've described when we talked about your product, your business, the maturity of your customers and the space you're in warrants that. You're not Calendly, right? Your product isn't so intuitive. This isn't super easy. Like if you are solving a massive problem with highly configurable and complex technology in a space that does warrant a white glove approach, why are you trying to give 1,000 customers to one CSM and expect the same outcome?
Yeah.
And there's a temperature in Kristi's voice.
Oh gosh, it's just because it's hot out and I'm schwitzing.
This early in a podcast, normally we have to like rile her up a little bit. So this is going to be a good one.
We got the fire poker today. I'm here.
No, I actually agree. I love this, and I think there's a lot of fatigue in the industry right now of people that have just like, I've tried all of these things. Like, who do I listen to? And I think like, these are all great success stories, but it's the same thing. Like when we come down to like a success plan or any of the stories that our CSMs release, like this, I've seen this for a decade now, where you hear about one customer that did something really, really well, and they want to tell that story, and then every CSM goes and runs and tries to duplicate it. And the problem is they're duplicating the actions. They're not duplicating the outcome or just shooting for the outcome. And it's like, this is something that we're dealing with right now in our organization, which is we have all of these great stories, these great plans, but they're not replicatable because it's a super niche, customized organization. And I really love that because it gives us a lot of opportunity. But this idea that we're painting with one big broad brush, even on the digital side and the tech touch or whatever you want to call it, it's like, it's not going to get there. Because I like what you just said, Kristi, is like, we're thinking about company first. We're not thinking about customer first. And the best programs, whether it's digital or on-prem or white glove, all come from because this is what our customers need in order to be successful for our company. And this echo chamber has become so loud. We're spending so much time listening to each other and not as much time listening to our customers.
Yeah. There's so much so much valid there. But I do want to hit on a couple of things that I've talked about a few times now, which is to say that, and this kind of summarizes what you guys have said, is like, I don't know of any other function really that has as much variability and volatility as CS, but digital CS specifically, because you've got, yes, you're different at every company, but you're also probably hopefully different in every customer and every industry that you're serving and every persona that you're serving. And so, it becomes this complex beast very, very quickly. And I think those that do it well are really good at stripping back the complexity and really solving for the big rocks first and then digging deeper into that complexity. The one thing that I think is very often overlooked in a digital strategy that I think actually makes the biggest difference is pulling emotional intelligence into the mix. And actually having your digital communications or outreach or whatever, and even the stuff that you build internally for your CSMs, have it be built in an emotionally intelligent way where you are aware of the recipient's challenges and you're aware of what, the possible outcomes are of whatever your engagement looks like. And so many of us just kind of get that wrong. Like, you draft an email, you're like, oh, that's going to be good. But is it really? Have you tested it? Have you really put yourself in your customer's shoes? Have you put yourself in the admin's shoes? Have you put yourself in the executive's shoes? It takes some really kind of introspective work to put that.
So then,
in place.
What is the one answer and solution that will apply to everybody that gets us to that outcome? Alex.
Yeah, the one, right? Yeah, I mean, look,
there isn't one. That's the trick, guys. The answer is there isn't one.
But it's like, I feel like sometimes when it comes to digital, we've just forgotten how to communicate sometimes. And we can take a lot of lessons from like B2C in those kinds of instances where they've learned how to communicate with their customers in a human way because it, you do that really well. And for some reason in B2B, we're just afraid to do that. I don't know. Well,
because B2C, it ties everything directly to like purchase and attachment rates. And we don't do that in B2B. It's really hard to say like this outreach increased revenue by X or added. I come from a B2B like marketing or B2C marketing background. So it's like you had a lot of really great telemetrics that just came in very, very quickly and it tied to revenue immediately. And we don't have that in B2B because everybody keeps taking revenue away from us and then they give it back to us and then they take it away from us. Yeah. And they give it back to us and they say, why isn't anything working?
Let me ask you guys a question because I just had an interesting conversation with a customer this morning and we were talking about how do you measure the impact and effectiveness of customer success as an individual, like CSMs. And so the dialogue was, my team is doing the things I've told them to do, but we're actually not seeing the effectiveness of that, right? And so this is where we had this really bold conversation of like, well, you're tracking actions, not outcomes. You're more focused on how many times did you connect with your customer? How many emails did you send to your customers? Like these tasks and these activities, and not what did that generate? And by design, we're not starting backwards, right? We should be starting with what is the objective we want to achieve? What is the outcome that we're looking for? And then what are the things we can do to ensure that's a reality? And how do we measure that? And so I'm curious for you, Alex, in conversations that you're having with folks, how are you seeing that done well, where it's not focused on actions and activities, but it's focused on real tangible outcomes that are driving value?
2 areas, I think, maybe 3. I don't know. We'll see where this goes. I think one of the really kind of hallmark things that I think we all should be doing is the CSQL. Because John went,
I agree with you, but like, man, the whiplash that I've had over the years with that term.
And by a CSQL, I mean like a really well implemented CSQL program that incentivizes the right behaviors and things like that, because it marries the behavior piece with the metric piece and the measurable kind of piece. If you as a CSM or somebody in digital or whatever can feed the pipeline, that's really going to help you when it comes time to like, quote unquote, proving your seat at the table, all that kind of BS. In digital, one of the things that I've been focused on is tying, really focusing on marketing metrics, to be honest with you, and campaign metrics, and looking at, engagement rate increases based on certain campaigns and those kinds of things. So really tying the outcome to the action, I think is where the rubber meets the road. Ooh.
How do you coach, like Kristi, I want your opinion on this too, but how do you coach people that have a background like this? That's a very sales heavy process is I'm tracking the activity, because as you know, every BDR, they just have to have more calls to hit their number. Like that's just the way that it works. And it's not the same in CS, but I see this more and more where we have tools that just, you have to log these activities. And if you don't hit these activities, then you're not successful. And it's not really tied to a successful outcome. So how do you advocate internally for this thing that you have to have metrics, you have to track something, especially if you've got a board or a VC or, PE firm that's saying, hey, we got to have something that can be reported. How do you balance that? And how do you coach people into that space of saying, yeah, these activities are good as long as they're based on the outcome, not what your, preamble is? Pause. Just let that hang. Cool.
Dramatic pause. Was that for you, Kristi?
I didn't know. I was going to let you were our guest, so I was going to let you speak first. But interestingly enough, I do have a marketing background as well. And so I spent the first 10 years of my career in marketing. So I'm very familiar with tracking those metrics. And it's hard not to get excited about that because marketing metrics are so immediate, especially if you're measuring things like engagement, right? You can see, were the emails that we sent, were they opened? Were they engaged with? Did the customer click through? But I think we've got to get better about attaching lagging indicators with these leading indicators because those metrics are important. Absolutely. They tell us a part of the story. But at the end of the day, if the objective there is to get your customers to use the product, buy more product, renew the product, we need to be able to attach that there. And it's the same challenges we have in marketing with attribution, right? It's hard to say, well, what is the cost of this, right? If somebody came to your website or if they came in through a webinar lead or if they did all of these things, then how do you attribute where that lead came from? And I think we have that same problem of attribution. What is working? If we're doing certain campaigns and we're driving all these initiatives and you've got CSMs reaching out, you've got product engaging, you got webinars and all this stuff, how do we know what's actually working? Or is it a combination of all these things? Or do they have to do 3 of these things and that drives the action? But ultimately, if the outcome that we're looking for is product related, is retention related, is growth related, is advocacy related, we need to be able to have some attribution to those metrics to understand, is it driving the right impact, not just the right activity? Is my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I love that. One
thing that you were touching on, John, was the coaching element of it and kind of the operational piece of it. And I think that's an area where you start to have this overlap between a digital team and an operations team, right? Because I think any good digital program is going to drive internal efficiencies as much as customer facing stuff. And for instance, helping a CSM complete, X number of tasks that they have to fill out in multiple places via automation and those kinds of things, right? So that's where those kinds of things start to become scalable because, okay, it's a CSQL or whatever, but through automation, you can help track it back in dashboard and reporting and all that kind of fun stuff, right? So I think going back to that point of having a well implemented program around this kind of stuff, that has to be taken into account because the last thing you want to do is throw more stuff at your CSMs that may or may not get some traction, that may or may not be used, right? And so really optimizing around that stuff is huge.
Yeah. Alex, I want to ask you a question. Besides technology, no, this is not, this isn't a game of gotcha. Besides technology, what is the one thing a customer needs in order to consider an effective scaled program?
The one thing.
And I have a one thing in my head and I want to see if our one things match.
I think for me, I'm gonna classify the one thing as the most often missed thing, which is clarity of the journey. Like clarity of where things start, where things end, especially with onboarding, but beyond onboarding. Like, what are the milestones what's the happy path milestones, and how are you compared to that? Because, we don't really, I think by and large, we don't share that stuff with our customers. And so our customers don't know whether they're in a good place or a bad place, and they don't know what they don't know, So I think it goes back to like transparency, having a really cleanly laid out kind of happy path for certain products and communicating that proactively very often.
I love that. Now, John, before I give my thoughts on what would you say is the one thing besides technology that companies need in order to effectively scale?
Yeah, I think they absolutely need the trust of their customers is the first and foremost thing. And I think what happens is that we've skipped building trust. Our sales cycles are not built around trust. They're about features and pitting one product against the other. And there's so much rip and replace that's happening. Yeah. That we don't have people, like, nobody's been with this newest software for 10 years and deep responsibility, right? So if you're going to say, I'm going to change your process without trust, you're going to break. We actually just had this, and I'm going to name drop them. We worked with Pendo, and we had an experience where they did a big pivot last year from a dedicated CSM to a pooled experience. And it was just, hey, you're in a pooled thing now. Here's how you schedule your QBR. Somebody will reach out to you. And we were sit there going like, we signed this contract like a year ago. What the fuck is going on? Like, what is going on? And that we gave a lot of feedback to the team, and they've made some changes, and that's great. But it happens every time, is that there's this big movement because it's a business need, but to your point, it's not a customer need. And none of the customers are left feeling better of the experience. It doesn't matter what the tool is. It doesn't matter what the process is. They're gonna lose. And we went through a massive amount of pain, and we've dropped off on adoption ever since. Like, it's just, there is a direct correlation between those two experiences. If you make these big swings without the trust of your customer, that you are doing what's best for them, not what's best for you as an organization. I know that there's a median. You got to find the middle of that, but that's my answer.
It goes back to that emotional intelligence thing.
Yeah.
Like, you got to know how that stuff's going to land.
Yeah. And the worst part is, like, sometimes businesses make the decision knowing that it's going to, like, and people are going to budget for a loss of 10 to 15%.
But in that case, it's a business decision, though. And that's okay too, right? Like, I think my problem is for companies that make these decisions and are not anticipating that, and they're not doing this with that outcome as not even a possibility, a certainty, right? Like, we have to do this as a business, and we anticipate that we are going to see X as a result. And as a business, we are okay with that. So I think that there's two sides to that, right? Like, there's the business need of having to make that pivot and saying, like, we're okay with that outcome. And then the companies that do that, and they're like, I can't believe it. This is so surprising. And I think that's crazy to me. All right. So here's what I loved is that you both gave awesome examples of what the top thing outside of technology could be, right? And my third is a third. It's not anything the two of you said. And I think all three of us have validity in saying that this is the most important. And mine would be data. Because I think if you don't have data, it doesn't matter what you have.
Clean
it is
data.
Almost impossible to orchestrate anything effectively. And I know, as much as you all know, companies don't have that. Like, it doesn't, I don't even care how big you are, how much software you have. I have yet to talk to any company that would bet their firstborn child that they have clean, accurate, and current data on their customers across the board.
Yeah.
That's just not, that just doesn't exist.
And most importantly, how to get to
it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. It's like it's trapped somewhere, locked up, far, far away. Like,
you have to
forget it. The democratization of data, that doesn't exist anywhere. But so that would be my thing, is because I feel like so many companies are trying to do these Herculean things and like make all this change and want to scale. And I'm like, well, what data are you using to orchestrate that? What data are you using to measure that? And then yeah, just those two things is enough for me to like get them to be like, oh, I'm unsure.
Yeah. Data is very much like the Mines of Moria in customer
And I almost
success.
feel like it was such an obvious one, which is probably why neither of you said it, because it was just like of course you need the data.
No.
Yeah, totally.
But I will say also, you need that is also what you need for anything else in this fucking business.
Anything
and we
else.
don't have it. And when you're looking at a CSP, when you're looking at any tool, it comes down to how clean your data is. And it's amazing to me how nobody has this figured out.
Mm-mm.
Like nobody has this figured out.
Yep.
And it is a constant battle with blaming product adoption on a CSM individual when there is actually no taxonomy prior to that implementation that says they can even be successful.
Oh yeah.
Right? Luckily, we're not like a heavy metric driven, like we're not tied into like a company's data lake or any of that kind of stuff. So like we're very much a silo, which I kind of like because I don't have to have these conversations. But all of our customers are deep in this process of just like, oh yeah, we got to get our process together. It's like, and I can't help you with that. Like I can't help you with that. So let me know. And I'm just going to keep updating, saying in 3 months, they're going to have their processes, maybe 6 months, and then nothing's going to happen until then. But somebody sold this without asking these questions.
Yeah. I have this thing called the digital CS sweet spot, which is basically a Venn diagram. And, in it are customer journey is one of them. So you got to have your thought out customer journey. You got to have some way to automate, around that customer journey. And the last thing is you need data. And the way I always describe it is like healthy-ish data, because you show me, exactly. You show me somebody who says, hey, I have clean data, I'll show you a liar. But a big part of what that boils down to is like being crystal clear about what outcomes you want to achieve, and then looking at what data do you need to support it, and then going and grading the quality of data, which is more than likely a D or an F at best. But then what are you going to do to like shore up some of that data? So, a practical example of that is right now we're kind of redesigning how we do customer outreach in our, call it digital segment, like our no touch segment. And, a big part of it, right, for the first couple of years is going to be manual account research, manual data, kind of looking over the data, looking over contacts, making sure we have the right contacts in place, updating systems and all that kind of stuff. And the problem with that is as soon as you do it, the clock starts ticking again because people change roles and people go to different companies and all that kind of, So it's like it's like this never ending thing where you dig the hole a little bit deeper and then, the soil comes back in and fills the hole back up. Which gets me to kind of the last point about this is I have a lot of hope for the future state of machine learning in this whole thing, because for instance, I think one of the best resources to really look at company data or an individual's place within an organization or whatever is LinkedIn, because everybody's kind of updating their LinkedIn profile, right? And so the tooling that kind of already exists, but it's patchwork to like scrape that stuff and scrape some other places to actively update contact data. That's just huge and solves a massive problem. We're just not there yet in terms of maturity. So,
yeah, wow, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's the period right there.
Hey everybody, it's Josh. I'm taking a quick break from the podcast to tell you a bit about UpdateAI. I started UpdateAI to solve two major challenges for CS teams. The first is that we save CSMs 4 to 5 hours per week with our productivity through AI. Secondly, we give leaders a window into all the conversations across each account and the entire portfolio. So we help knowledge transfer, we help increase the coverage model of your CS teams, and we help you detect emerging patterns in what your customers are telling your CSMs across all the risks, product feedback, advocacy moments, and expansion opportunities. So come check us out at www.updateai. It's completely free to sign up and trial.
I like how you're thinking about Yeah, the frustration point, but also like some of the solutions. And this is something that I've seen too, is like when we're talking about all of this complex data, like LLMs are the answer. Like there is a solution that somebody is percolating inside of their caffeine and the croy-addled brain that is saying like, okay, I should be able to just plug something into data generally for a company and then assign a grade and then assign an access and answer these questions without having to be like, oh, I need to get this API key and I need to connect with this engineer. Like just the process that we have to go through right now. Like there is somebody out there that is taking all of these disparate places and saying, here's where you're at, here's where you need to go in order for you to meet your goals of X.
Yep.
Well,
somebody recently told me that they're running digital motions using LinkedIn ads, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
They're actively yeah, right. They're actively targeting their customers, like for certain for this company at this role level, title, whatever it is, with these LinkedIn ads about like what they can do to help drive adoption and all that kind of stuff. It's like crazy.
Well, retargeting in itself is like a very interesting experience, and it's just like you have a conversation with somebody and then all of a sudden your social media is giving you like content for these things. So I wonder how that's performing, because just as an end user, like I don't know how I feel about that experience. Feeling like that is infiltrating my personal social places, LinkedIn being a social platform. But I guess if it's related and it's relevant, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key, right? Again, emotional intelligence.
Right. Huh.
So
on that one.
Man, I do. I mean, I think, as soon as the digital stuff came in to play, whenever that happened, I blocked it out of my my memory. But the correlation with marketing is something that's really interesting, because prior to that, I always felt like CS was moving more and more closer to product. At least when it comes to like, we do so much with feature requests, we do so much with bug fixes and support. And there's just this like Venn diagram of product and customer success. It's really interesting. And I think what happens is, or at least what I've seen happen in some of the roles that I've been at, is that we do get so focused on, telemetry and usage and this stuff that in an ideal state, sure, is an indicator of great stuff, but it's lacking the EQ, it's lacking the gut, it's lacking the human, the trust, all of that stuff that we also kind of need. And then we get into this digital world where we're actually kind of copying a lot of stuff that marketing is doing, which actually is a lot of gut check stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot of looking at what's happening in the industry today. And it's a lot about what's trending and about what people are responding to and that kind of immediate stuff, that immediate feedback that we don't get with just basic lagging usage indicators, right? So there's this pivot back into it. And I'm really excited for this pivot, because I do think it's important for us to kind of think of ourselves as marketers, because we are competing. Even when they are customers, we are still competing for their attention. And I think a lot of CSMs act as if they have earned their attention because they signed a contract. And there is this mindset that's actually not true. You have to actually earn that contact every single time. And it doesn't just come from having a good call and providing value. It means not pissing them off with sending 20 emails in a quarter or a month or whatever, like all of these different things that we do as CSMs, where we just overload our customers with work. And that's one of the things that I've started coaching, is very much like, do you know how many other CSMs your point of contact is working with on a daily basis? Like, do you know who else is reaching out to them? And most of them like, oh, I've never asked that. And we did some stats, and like a good portion of our individual customers that we work with have 6 or 7 CSMs that they work with, right? On any number of products. Some of them are competing, some of them are not. Just in general, like if we're talking with an ops guy, there's like 6 or 7 CSMs that's trying to get a QBR, that's trying to get a status update, that's asking them about usage. And if their job just becomes, I have to communicate with CSMs, like that's a pretty shitty job, right? Like that takes away the actual time for them to do work.
We could flip this whole thing on its head. We could say, hey, there's a middle, there's like a middle CSM per customer contact, and that CSM like is subcontracted by all the vendors.
So you can have a central CSM for all of your CSMs for any company. I'm
That's
interested.
right.
No,
That's
actually,
right.
there was a project that I was working on with a big customer of mine, and it was with like a secondary product that wasn't a competitor, but we had an integration. And I was working with my point of contact who was bringing in the CSM from this other company. And this guy in the middle was just kind of getting in the way, like not in a bad way, but he was just like, it took him a while to get back because he was really busy. And I was like, can you just like hook me up with your CSM?
Yeah.
And so I've got this like chain of these other CSMs that manage the same customer in the same account.
Interesting.
And then we talk to each other and we have like status updates on products. And I'm like, this works actually a lot better within reason. Obviously there's NDAs and all kinds of stuff. Like we're all in the same project team, but it's been really fun to like, what's it like for you?
Do you like them?
What's working for you guys? Are you okay with this as well?
Yeah. Well, it is interesting because, I think if you are someone who uses, who is kind of the main point of contact or the main buyer for a large portion of the tech stack within your company, I think it makes sense to treat it much like you would like in, a period of internal QBRs where you set aside some time and you review each platform on a regular basis and you invite your vendors to come in at that time. And in large organizations, why not hire somebody to do that? Like to manage your vendors and be that central point of contact.
Interestingly enough, really large companies do have that. They have like a vendor management organization, and their entire job is to work. They're not even procurement, right? Like they're working with procurement, they're working with legal, but the goal is to make sure that each team who has procured the software is getting what they need from it, managing all of the feature requests and updates. And like they are that central hub, which is also really interesting. But it would be cool to see a function like that scaled down from not just super, super large enterprises.
Yeah. Well, because like that is a need, like especially if we're going into this digital world where like a lot of people are spending a lot of time, not just on digital CS, but also compartmentalizing.
Companies on average are buying an average size company has over 200 SaaS applications.
Yeah.
Over 200.
I think that's too many.
Half of them, they have more platforms than they do employees. Like,
that's right.
So, consolidation, that's a conversation. There's a lot of overlap in functionality, and we see that because a lot of companies, I think, are going through that consolidation process right now. But then, too, like, who manages 200 applications?
I know.
Yeah, unreal. I do see us marching towards this more Khan Academy style world, if you're familiar with that, where basically, you're in Khan Academy, basically your student goes through the lecture, virtually, and then they come to class, and that's time to actually talk about stuff that's, productive and important. And I've been chatting with, for example, Percy Rose at HPE for a little bit, and he's effectively using, Cast App to do these regular business reviews virtually with his customers, which I think is a really cool way of just getting the mundane stuff out of the way. You get your ticket volumes and your bugs and your ticket, blah, blah, blah. You get all that crap out of the way so that you're actually spending the time talking about, okay, how are we going to improve this for you? And how are we going to, drive those outcomes?
Right. Because one might even say that those types of things shouldn't even be part of the EBR, QBR process.
They should not.
Right.
That shouldn't even be a thing.
Or the core process.
Core.
But to your point, Kristi.
Oh, go ahead.
That takes
I know.
data.
See, I could solve everybody's problem if I could figure out how to get companies' data accurate, clean, current, get updated fast, so it's not irrelevant. We should go solve that problem.
You would make $1 million.
Like literally tomorrow, I'd be a millionaire.
I
would just make $1 million. Just $1 million.
$1 million. Yeah.
Feels limited. My TAM is small. You're telling me my TAM is small. I'm not interested. Forget it. I'm out.
We need more product lines, Kristi.
Are you going to upsell them?
No, this is also kind of one of those interesting things that happens with digital CS and CX, which is what I think that we should all be calling it, because that's what it is. It is customer experience. We cannot guarantee success. We are guaranteeing an experience. But I sat in on a community call that a friend of mine schedules like once a month. Her name's Julia over at Canny. And we actually talked through like QBRs. Like they're like, I cannot get my customers on QBRs, right? And as somebody who comes from a one-to-one, like very white glove approach model, and is working with our scale team to try to figure out how we're providing not the same, but similar outputs. A lot of people, we use Matic. I know a lot of people use Matic and other tools for these like digital automated, they call them QBRs. And the value that I've actually found out of it is with these automated QBRs that go out, these, 87 page slide decks on usage and features and all this kind of stuff. I then get on a call. I don't have to talk about any of that shit.
Yeah.
Like there is it is one blank page with my executives to talk about like what their goals are, which is what they should be. And I think to your point, Kristi, I remember like years ago when we started talking about this, when you were, I think maybe just a guest, like we talked about your customer outcome review or whatever it was, and how we just need to get the fuck away from usage on our QBRs and our EBRs. And I still see it every single day where, a CSM will just like talk about how many session units or how many log calls or all this kind of stuff. And the CEO is sitting there going,
listen,
like,
you know what has to happen? The problem is like all these things are trash. I'm sorry. I see even though this conversation continues to happen all the time, I've not seen anybody like nail this or get it better. What we need to start asking leaders up front, like the executive sponsors, because all that is the objective of these things is to validate success, validate outcomes, validate that you're getting value. So why don't you ask them on day one? We have a multitude of ways that we can help communicate this to you. What is your preferred mechanism? Would you like to receive this asynchronously? Would you like to receive a report? Would you like to have a formal review process where we get on a call together? Why aren't we giving people options so they can opt in to the way that they want to receive those updates? Instead, we force people into these weird motions that are a waste of time and don't even land the value that we think in our selfish minds that it does. Well, I know why too, but I'm not going to say it out loud because I'm going to ostracize a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be doing a lot of internal looking at themselves in the mirror.
I think it's very clear, and I'm a big fan of calling this out too. It's something that I'm in the process of doing with a lot of the folks that I talk to. Like, if our leadership doesn't have a way to track and repeat something, then they are not providing value.
Right.
Like this is a middle management dilemma. And it is fucking with a lot of actual success in customer. Not that middle management is bad, but because we need to say like, okay, well, I need a GRR of X%. And then you kind of break it down into your VP and then your director and then your manager and then your team lead. And you've got to have little things that they all do. And they all kind of feed up into this OKR model or V2 MOM or whatever organizational like approval system you're working through. When in reality, like if I were to go to my boss and be like, okay, this subset wants digital, this subset wants in person, this subset wants whatever it is, then my boss would be like, I don't know how to communicate this to you. Can you just we're going to mark all these guys at risk. And then you start treating them differently. And it's like, but you're not actually looking at what the customer wants and what the customer needs. And I don't know.
Well, that's the problem is like people are like, well, if we can't track it, we can't do it, right? Like it has to be something you can manage or measure, or else it's not going to help our process. We can't scale it. And I think it's like it comes down to okay, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you can't. I don't think that we're thinking creatively enough on how we should. Right. So we stick to these like, okay, is there a quick, easy way to do this? Instead of thinking creatively, at least initially, to say, okay, maybe this isn't quick and easy, but it's going to give us what we need to say, like, yes, this was a success.
Yeah. And
and this comes down to Alex. I'm just going to keep cutting Alex.
Pretend like he's Josh.
Doing that for a few minutes.
I'm just gonna mute myself.
If you could just leave and let me and John be alone, that would be great.
That would be great. It's my dream. Go ahead, Alex.
I don't even know what I was going to say. No.
Perfect.
See you later. I think a lot of what we overlook sometimes is that we can ask our customers this stuff.
Yeah. But why won't our bosses listen to them?
Well, and the other thing too is like, what do y'all's take on SMS text?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a big fat. It depends too on that.
It depends on all this stuff.
I don't have good feelings.
Really?
Because I also don't have good feelings about cell phones and cold calling.
In general,
like
modern technology.
Yeah. If I could get a carrier pigeon, I will sign a contract any day.
Well, here's the deal though. As an option, like in certain industries, you have executive leaders who live on their phones.
Yeah.
They just do. They're not necessarily checking email, whatever. And again, certain industries, it doesn't apply to all, just like we said earlier, like one digital motion does not fit into the next digital motion, right? But in those industries where it makes sense, why not give your customer the option to be communicated with via text
this is
and
exactly
SMS.
what we said, right? Like you need the optionality. So give people options and let them opt into the things and the ways. It's like what do you want? And then what is the mechanism in which you want it?
Yes, I hear you. But Alex, I'm going to be the devil's advocate here.
Please.
That's the way that emails used to be. And then everybody got fucking over-emailed.
Sure.
And now we have too many Slack
We all know
groups.
how I feel
And
about
now we
Slack.
have too many LinkedIn groups. And then we have too many private communities. And we have too many. I swear to God, if everybody transitions over to SMS, then it's going to be we need a BlackBerry.
Well, okay. I'm actually here for the BlackBerry
right?
like comeback if we could, because I miss BBM.
Yeah. BBM. Give me the physical.
John, you would be my favorite BBMer. And then we can get Nextels too
Give
while
me
we're
the
at it.
physical keyboard.
Absolutely. No. So, but my point is, if we look for where people are, we soil fertile ground. And I actually mean that in a
negative way.
Poor opportunity.
Sure. Yeah.
From like this industry. Like I don't answer phone calls now. If I don't have it in my phone, I even don't answer it when I have it in my phone.
That's why
I
you've been
don't
screening
answer
all
it.
of my calls. Yeah.
That explains a lot,
so
John.
Unresponsive.
Well, yeah, Kristi. But no, and I think this is the thing, is that we are always hunting for like the next thing that we can, like, how do we get people's attention? And I think we need to really back up and
we
say,
need to ask them, like, why are they ignoring us?
Have
Like, let's
everybody's
go back to
attention.
that. Like, people aren't responding and they're not engaging because we're doing it wrong. Instead, we keep trying to do more and more and more and then just be everywhere. And we're just annoying.
We live in this environment where dopamine is just constantly created by everything that's around us, you know, like, and it stresses me out too. Like, you know, I have a hard time putting my phone down sometimes. And when I do, you know, when I do make a conscious effort for the first two days, I develop hives, you know, it's that kind of thing.
It's
why
real,
am I
the
depressed?
itching and the scratching and the
on?
sweats and yeah, it's tough.
And so that's where I think, okay, again, this emotional intelligence thing comes around, because you know that whoever you're talking with is the exact same way. They're getting notifications on their computer and they're getting notifications here and whatever. Their Ring doorbell has somebody at the front. They're like,
and dogs are always missing. Poor
freaking
animals.
stop.
They're always getting out.
That's right. And so if you can not weasel your way,
Nope,
but
you
if you
said
can,
weasel.
No,
You
that's
said
it.
weasel.
That's what we do.
Yeah. But if you can slide your way in a way that is like, you know, I'm here, I'm not pushing stuff on you, we're just here to support you. I think that's the magic sauce.
Well, I think John is really good at sliding into people's DMs. So maybe he can give us a course.
Okay, Kristi has some insider information that I feel like she's bearing the lead a little bit on this.
I think we need to wrap it up, because I think if Josh was here, Josh would be like, you know what, click, end conversation.
He would have
he wouldn't even say that. He just cuts it off. He just hits the leave button and we're all disconnected. It's the saddest ending of every relationship.
We're going to end because our producer won't edit anything longer than a certain length, and we're getting close to that length. But I have a couple more questions for Alex the Weasel Turkovic.
Wow. Is anyone else envisioning Timon from The Lion King right now? Because I'm getting a very specific visual, and I think we do a little side-by-side action and see.
I just see Pauly Shore in Encino Man.
It's a weasel.
Encino Man.
We squeezed the juice, or we wheezed the juice, or what was he doing? He was like
wheezing the juice.
We're wheezing
the juice.
So Alex, for you, what do you see, or what are you looking for out of kind of the future of digital customer experience?
Golly, dude.
Yeah. I know it's a great question.
I want us to be in this world where our stuff just talks to each other, And we can interact with our tech stack in a human kind of way, which is coming, right? But like if we need to go do an outreach or whatever, we just talk to our tech stack and it makes it happen. We don't have to spend all this time kind of, again, it's that building efficiency into your human process, because we all have stuff that we want to go do that we know we're never going to get to do. Right. It's not about reducing headcount. It's not about like all that kind of stuff. It's about like doing the shit that we actually want to go do.
Yeah. Like I need AI to do my dishes.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Create another Drake.
Wait until your kids are old enough.
Right. I know, right? Well, thank you, Alex. This has been wonderful. I always love spending time with you. Kristi as well. You are a pleasure.
I am a saint.
We love you.
Mm-hmm.
And
I adore you both.
Josh Schachter is
that
what,
no? He's probably drinking wine.
What are you doing?
Right? Like drinking
Martha's
wine. He's
Vineyard?
probably like sitting. He's definitely sitting in an Adirondack
wine?
chair somewhere. Right?
Yep.
Definitely.
Okay, and he's probably sweating.
Yeah,
so that's like something else that's happening. He's definitely sweating.
Yeah, he's definitely sweating.
He's definitely getting in
mosquitoes.
trouble. So Jess is definitely probably like already yelled at him 3 times for 7 different things.
Yeah. We know his partner,
and
so
we
have
Jess.
like it's fun to be able to.
We love Jess.
We love Jess. But that's it for today.
And we're going to do proper goodbyes. We can all actually say goodbye without him just clicking off. So goodbye, everybody.
Well, thank you both for having me. It was educational and enlightening and wonderful. I love you both. And it was great talking with you.
Yeah, we love you guys too.